Good Friday afternoon to you. 4 o'clock time for Sports4CLE. Hope your day has been going well. Hope your weekend is off to a great start. The Browns are getting ready for a Sunday afternoon match in Washington, D.C. against the Commanders. Buckeyes also getting ready for a New Year's Eve matchup in the national semifinals. We'll talk about both of them quite a bit. So reports are coming out that Paul DePodesta, the chief strategy officer and analytics guy, is playing a major role in game planning. You see, this is from a Tony Grossi Land on Demand article that analytics and Paul DePodesta, not really a football guy, the research and analytics have been a large part of the game plans. Let's welcome in Quincy Carrier, host of Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Quincy, if this is true, how concerning is that Paul DePodesta and the analytics crew are major factors in game planning?
I think it depends on how that information is getting out, but I don't think in the way that it's been presented, it's really that much of a concern, to be honest with you. Most teams have analytics be a part of their major planning. From everything that I've seen that's been out there, and this story has kind of been floating around out here for the last 3 years. Everything that I see is hey, they just want to make sure that they're sticking with the trends that are working in the league and that they're keeping up with that. I don't think this is necessarily, hey, Kevin, we're going to run stick 32 times this week, or we're going to run out of empty and we need to be out of this formation. These are just basic guardrails. They're hey, let's make sure we don't fall behind the rest of the league. Let's make sure that we are doing what everybody else is doing and what's working around the league at a high clip, at a high efficiency rate. And if we're not, let's find ways to work that in there. Every good team in the NFL does this. I mean, this is something that Bill Belichick has been doing for a while, where he incorporates this. It's not as big of a story because Bill kind of controls everything, but analytics play a huge role in his success. When he was with Brady, he was one of the early adopters of it. So this is not, look, I get it at this point of the year when you hear John DePodesta, non-football guy, used to work for baseball. And it sounds like he's telling the football people what to do, but this is not what's happening, right? His job has always been to give suggestions. This is an analytics-based front office and coaching staff, so they're going to be listening to this information regardless. They're just getting better versions of it. And let's be fair, as much as we want to call John DePodesta not a football guy, every suggestion that has come to light of his that the Browns did not follow was followed up by a football guy making an absolute disastrous decision, right? We can go back to Teddy Bridgewater, remember the analytical report that they spent $2 million on and told him to draft Teddy Bridgewater instead of Johnny Manziel. They go with Johnny Manziel, ends up being a disaster. Sean McDermott not getting hired over Hugh Jackson. And then there's, Kevin Stefanski not getting hired over Freddie Kitchens. Famous football guy John Dorsey died on the hill to keep that one alive, right? So we can label him however we want, but his decisions have been correct more often than they've not. And if you look at the last 3 years where he's had more control, this team's been over 500 in that 3-year stretch. So yeah, I don't think this is freak out, panic worthy, Mike Holmgren era type stuff. I think this is just what you want a franchise to do behind the scenes to make sure they don't fall behind.
Fair enough. So in other words, they're looking at data, and how they interpret the data is to, up for question. But in terms of game planning, it's more data driven and how they interpret it.
Yeah, and here's the key too. If Paul DePodesta was saying you need to do this, it would be very apparent in the play calling trends with the Browns, right? That they need to throw a lot on first down. They don't throw that much on first down. So the game plan decisions and the play calling decisions are ultimately being made on what Kevin Stefanski feels is best at the time. There are suggestions long-term and big picture-wise that Paul DePodesta is going to throw in there and say, hey, maybe we should think about throwing more on first down. Maybe we should think about that. But, those suggestions everybody gives.
Fair enough. All right. As you might guess, the reports have created some voicemails. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, this is Rico. If the reports are accurate that DePodesta is the one crafting the game plan and using analytics to devise said game plan, then this is a travesty. How can a baseball guy have the audacity to tell a head coach of a football team what to do, when to do it, and how to do it? This is why our organization is the laughingstock of the entire league. Also, that is why no respectable head coach will want to come here. Like, for example, Sean Payton. You think that he will let some baseball nerd tell him how to call plays and when to do it and why? This is truly embarrassing and so heartbreaking to hear this, man. I'm tired of this ridiculous and nonsensical stuff that happens inside that building. It's like Stefanski is nothing but a yes man and wants to please his boss so he won't get fired. Okay, I digress.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. And so that's a sampling, Quincy. But that's, again,
those poor producers behind the scenes. You know what I mean? I can give them a shout.
That's not what's happening. But you could make the case that a guy like Sean Payton or a guy like, fill in the blank head coach would have pause to come here just because of the struggles this franchise has had for a number of years.
I would say that probably has more to do with it than like the analytics thing, right?
Right.
Like Sean Payton was a noted user of analytics when he was in New Orleans. It's one of the things that got him ahead. He was like ahead of the curve on that. Even guys like John Harbaugh, former Super Bowl winning coach, it drives them crazy in Baltimore how much he just defers to analytics on these things, right? But these respected coaches, there are a lot of them that are like, yeah, this is the new wave. And again, he's not telling Kevin what to do. These are suggestions and guardrails that are kind of agreed upon between everybody before they go into the season. And this is just how they choose to do their job on it, right? The last guy we had that didn't want anything to do with analytics was Freddie Kitchens. So it's not like it's a guarantee that if you leave him alone, that none of this stuff is going to have an effect. I think, again, we hear analytics. I think there are some fans now who have grown up with analytics being a part of football, but there's a lot where this thing's still kind of new to everybody. And new things tend to freak people out, when they hear it's a part of their front office, they freak out like it's a bad thing. But this is just the way the NFL has been going. When you have Andrew Berry, when you have Kevin Stefanski, when you have DePodesta, this is just what they want to do. Like, this is what all three of them want to do. This is how they want this team to be ran. And this is how Jimmy wants the team to be run. And quite frankly, it's a lot of teams that are ran like that. So, yeah, it's just, again, if you win, nobody really cares how it gets done, right? But when you're not winning, everybody wants to be the cook.
Yeah. That's exactly. Winning cures everything. So Myles Garrett missed the first series, sat down by Kevin Stefanski. Here's Garrett talking about the discipline that caused him to miss the first series against the Saints.
That was coach's decision, based off of what happened during the week, and I respect his decision. I was sick, and I didn't communicate well enough.
And were you were fine with the discipline? Were you accepted and you're cool with it?
I respect his decision.
Is it disappointing to you that you're not going to be your captain and leader, right? The fact that you're not out there for the beginning of the year?
I mean, I think it was a misunderstanding at the end of the day, but I mean, that's how it went down, and got to respect, how he feels about the situation and his judgment.
Have there been any communication issues in the past or anything before this, or was this like the first time?
It was the first time, really, something like this, so I don't foresee anything like this happening again.
So again, Quincy, he was sick, didn't communicate well, so that was the reason for sitting out for the first series. He's not making a big deal about it, so shouldn't be considered a big deal. That was Myles Garrett today talking about it, though.
I mean, that whole thing was just an absolute nothing burger from the start, I feel like, but it got blown up into so much proportion. People were like, is he going to request a trade now? Or I feel like there is a portion of the fan base is waiting for the other shoe to drop on Myles for whatever reason, because whenever we have a good player, it feels like there's a portion of the fan base is like, hey, he's going to want out or something like that. I don't know. But yeah, it seems like Myles is, look, he clearly doesn't agree with the decision. Nobody agrees with their punishment. Nobody's like, yes, this is exactly what I should be punished for. But you do make peace with it, and it sounds like he's made peace with it. So it's not like that big of a deal.
Yep, I would agree. And again, This is what happens when you do not meet expectations as a football team. Everything gets magnified. All right, speaking of that, everything getting magnified, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hi, Dave. Howard from Marin County. A lump of coal for everybody in the Browns organization. When I look at Kevin Stefanski, I see defeat in his eyes. I see really a nice person who can't make adjustments, and I see failure. As far as Deshaun Watson, he isn't the savior. He went 4-12 in Houston. He could go 4-12 for the Browns next year. The Browns have a lot of problems, least of which are the offensive line is gone terrible. The last 4 or 5 games, they've been awful. They can't run the ball. The defensive line is terrible. I mean, the Browns need a lot of fixes, and I'm somewhat disconcerted that the money and the draft picks that's spent on Deshaun is going to retard that. I don't see Kevin Stefanski coaching for the Browns next year to lose the next 2 games. So, great show. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. I know you've addressed this on Untitled, Unfiltered. Do you think Kevin Stefanski's safe? I certainly do.
I think it's more likely than not. Like, unless this thing turns into a complete disaster at the end of this year, I don't see him getting fired. Somebody pointed this out. I think it was Hayden Grove on Twitter. Everybody, like, the core players are 27. You can't waste time talking about we're going to get a new coach and we're going to get into his new system and we're going to see what happens in year 1. I think not only is Myles Garrett at a point in his career, Deshaun Watson's at a point of his career, Nick Chubb is at a point of his career where it's like, hey, we gotta win now. And if Kevin's not a disaster, we gotta roll with it, like straight up. You know what I mean? If the Bengals can get to the Super Bowl with Zach Taylor, then you can do it with Kevin Stefanski. So I think he's fine. They're going into too much of a critical point here to be switching coaches out, and it doesn't seem like he is a Hugh Jackson level disaster. He's not like, I don't believe him to be incompetent. I believe him to do things that makes people mad every once in a while, but that's not necessarily incompetence. That's just a disagreement with philosophy at times.
Yep, I would agree. Quincy Carrier and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Also hear a little bit more from the defense. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, host of Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Everybody's talking about getting rid of the defensive coach and the special teams coach and not get rid of Kevin Stefanski. No. That's not going to work. We all know how that goes. You get rid of him, he's already going to be envious. Secondly, the guy is just as responsible as they are, and he's the head coach. He didn't do anything about those guys. What makes you think he's going to be any better next year? Believe your ears and your eyes. What you saw, what you heard from Kevin Stefanski is the truth. That's who he is. Why do you think some of these other guys left? Because they weren't believing in Kevin Stefanski no more. And we saw this year that the people are here don't believe in Kevin Stefanski no more. We have different people. It's the same result. We have different players. We can't say we need to change them. We got to put them in a good system and, somebody who will put them in position to win. Kevin Stefanski was not that guy. We need to get a whole new setup, and maybe somebody can put these guys in a position to win. We only got 4 years with Deshaun. We don't want to waste another one. I want to hear what you think about what I said. Bye.
As always, appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, I disagree. As we said last time, I don't think you want to change. Things change when you change the quarterback and the quarterback skill set. That's why it's been a little fractured offensively. But I think Deshaun Watson wants to play in this system, and I think you have to see how planning for him from the beginning of a year looks.
He said something interesting there, position to win. I'm going to ask the audience some questions. Is up 13 against the Jets with 1 minute, 20 seconds left Is that position to win? I like to think so. Is a 45-yard field goal with no time left at the end of the game position to win? I would say yes. You know what I mean? There have been multiple situations this season where the Browns have been in position to win a football game and the kicker misses a kick or the defense falls asleep. This is why people want those people gone that are responsible for it. I don't recall a situation where the offense was like the only reason the Browns couldn't win a football game this year. And look, I know people like to look at head coach and say it's responsibility over everything. And at some point it is, right? He's going to have to make a decision at this point when it's this bad with his assistants on what he does going forward, right? Because that's going to reflect on him. But he's also in charge of the offense. He's not in charge of special teams. He's not in charge of the defense. He's in charge of evaluating those guys at the end of the year, but he's not really in charge of doing their job during the season. So what am I evaluating Kevin Stefanski for? It's the offense. And the truth is, in the NFL, if you want a good offense, if you feel like you have a good offensive coordinator, somebody is a good offensive coordinator, and they're going to be able to create a good offense, that guy becomes a head coach simply because you don't want to have your offense change over every 3 years when they get poached from somebody else's staff to go be a head coach, right? You want to be able to maintain consistency on that side of the ball. So if you have somebody on your staff that's really good at offense, they end up being the head coach. That's what it is in the NFL now, right? We can talk about offensive coordinators all we want. At the end of the day, Kevin's job is going to always be reflected on his ability to run this offense. I feel like the last 4 or 5 weeks here are a better argument than anything before against him. And I think that's why the heat got turned up on him. But I don't think it's gotten to a point to where it's like, oh, okay, well, Kevin can't come back, right? If the offense is bad next year with Deshaun for a whole 17 games, then that's just a bet that you're going to have to lose. But I don't think it's at that point yet with them.
Yeah. The offense has not been as good as I thought it would be with Watson, but we'll see. Myles Garrett, again, talked about just the whole mindset and the feel of missing the playoffs.
It's a frustrating thing. I mean, visibly frustrated, get home and, just that kind of energy that you brought, throughout the season. You have to try to, hold on to that. Energy just can't, it's got to move. It's got to be, in an environment or it leaves. It continues to move in it and display itself in different manners. But, when you lose like that and then you feel like you have a disappointing season, you miss the playoffs, when you feel like you should have made it or you should have done better. That's when you lose the energy in the building, you lose the positivity, and things start to go into disarray. But as you can see, there's still a lot of positivity in here. Still a lot of guys who love being around, know each other, and playing the game at a high level. So it really keeps us up, especially knowing that we have underachieved, but we're not going to walk around with our heads held down.
Yeah, and Quincy, it is frustrating because the defense hasn't played as well. That's the big thing. I thought the defense had the ability to be top 10, and they're just not. They're not.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the story the whole season, right? We kind of talked about it. We were relying on this defense to be good. We really thought this defense was going to be able to carry this team through what could have been a rough offensive outing early in this season, and the defense just never showed up. It's why Joe Woods is most definitely on the hottest of hot seats. So, it's disappointing. It's disappointing when you're on that side of the ball. You're supposed to be one of the best defensive players, and you've been playing well. You can't fix everything, right? Like he can't put himself in a different position. He can't stop the coverage bust from happening, right? Like he can only do so many things from that position, and he does a lot of those things. It's just, you can't control it all, right? It's kind of like when Joe Thomas was left tackle for you, right? Like the offensive lines weren't always great with Joe Thomas there, but Joe Thomas was always great. So it's just one of those things where it's frustrating. Hopefully they get put in better position to win and succeed, and they get a system I feel like fits the personnel better.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. All right, to give some teeth to what we just said about the defense. Run defense EPA rankings, so expected points added. Titans are best at 41.29. Browns are worst at minus 27.9. 1.85. Joe Woods was asked this week about that run defense.
You know, I just think, teams start running the ball on us, and we get a high number of runs per game. And we haven't handled it well because we give up explosive runs, and that was the main focus for us throughout the season was how can we eliminate the explosives. And we just didn't do a good job. But when you give up big runs, you give up big yards, and I think that's what happened to us throughout the season.
And Quincy, they kept running the ball, and the Browns couldn't stop it. They knew the run was coming, and they couldn't stop it.
Yeah, and look, there are around, like, when you have a problem like this, there are levels in which that problem can exist where you can kind of get excused for it, right? Because on some level, like, there are some things going on with the defense that are outside of Joe Woods' control. But it bleeding to this bad is not acceptable, right? And on some level, he has to know this is on him because it can't get this bad. You can't be the worst defense when it comes to run EPA in the NFL when you have this much money into it. So he has to be able to scheme something. He has to be able to put guys in different positions, maybe call better. Like, he has to be able to do something to avoid this. And I think he failed on that front. And I think that he understands what's going on right now.
Yeah, I would agree wholeheartedly. Quincy and I are going to step aside, take one more time out. Other side of the break, we'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason, talk a little bit about the offense and Deshaun Watson. Sports4CLE, we'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine. We continue talking Browns with Quincy Carrier, host of Untitled, Unfiltered Browns coverage. All right, let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yeah, hi, this is Ron from Cleveland. I don't know what can be said about this season and the coaching staff and everything, but, we're in dead last now, last place. And it seems like since Stefanski's gotten here, we've been in a nosedive, and I guess the only good thing I can say is we can't get any lower than we are now. I hope they take a good look at the coaches, the players we have, and try and figure something out because this is just totally unacceptable. From being in the playoffs a few years ago to being in nothing now, and a team like the Bengals being in dead last for years and then shooting up to the Super Bowl, we got to be doing something wrong. Hope they can figure it out like the Bengals did. Thanks a lot. As always, go Browns, woof.
Appreciate all the voicemails. Quincy, what I would say, and I don't hear the voicemails a lot of times before, the Bengals figured it out because they got Joe Burrow. So the Browns think they got their guy in Deshaun Watson. They had to wait 11 games this year before he played.
Since Stefanski has gotten here, the Browns have been in a nosedive? This is like the most successful 3-year stretch of games they've had since coming back in '99. This is literally the opposite of it. You've gone up whether we feel it or not. This is just the pain of being mediocre at this point, right? Which is some years you can win more than you lose, some years you don't. And it's frustrating because you believe you have a hope where every other year was just complete abject indifference. That's what this is. But don't act like it's like the worst that it's ever been. We literally saw the worst stretch in the 2-year stretch in NFL history with 1-31. We witnessed that. That wasn't that long ago. I don't know how we forgot things like that. And people keep bringing up, well, the Bengals have leaped us. Yes. The Bengals leaped you. They have Joe Burrow. We had Baker Mayfield for a couple of years. Yes, they had the better quarterback. They're going to leapfrog you at that point, right? What was Baker Mayfield's 2021 versus Joe Burrow's? I believe Joe Burrow was much, 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 much better than Baker Mayfield that year, right? They were able to make a smart decision by drafting Jamar Chase in a team that, was a perennial playoff contender. Like, I don't know why we're acting like we were ahead of the Bengals for so long. The Bengals have always kind of been ahead of us for a while here. They had a little bit of a slump, got Joe Burrow, got rid of Andy Dalton, and boom, back up, right? You know, we have a lot of work to do. We've never even been the Bengals since 1999. Like, we gotta work our way up to that. And Deshaun Watson is the key to getting up to that level and up past that level. The game's about the quarterback position. They made a big bet at the quarterback position, the biggest bet on that position in franchise history. They're hoping it works out. If it works out, we will not be sitting here next year talking about the Bengals. We will be talking about trying to beat the Bengals or trying to get first place from the Bengals. So we'll see. Again, this was not a one-year trade for Deshaun Watson. This was not a one-year rental. Let's see if we can sign him in free agency. This is a 5-year future at the very least with Deshaun Watson.
All right,
let's let it play out a little bit. You know, we're at the very, very beginning of the plan. We're not even close to the end of it. So let's let this thing play out a little bit before we freak out and hit the panic button.
All right. Watson talked earlier this week just on the importance of continuing to grow in Kevin Stefanski's offense.
It's very important to be able to build that opportunity, that trust, and that chemistry between each other. We only had 4 games with each other. A little bit of off season, but we want to do that. But that hot seat stuff and all that, that's for media and the talk and stuff like that. People that make those decisions, it does the right thing for this organization. But we all trust Kevin. We love Kevin. We support Kevin. We respect Kevin and everything that he about the Cleveland Browns. And so. We're going to continue to build that trust and build that chemistry and look for the future. My main focus is winning. I came to Cleveland to win a Super Bowl. So by any means, if that's throwing the ball 5 times or throwing the ball 40 times and scoring 5 touchdowns and scoring 0 touchdowns, as long as we win, that's all I really matter, and that's all I really care about. So the stats and stuff like that, I've done that before. I've had opportunities before. I led the league in passing before. Scored a lot of touchdowns, did Pro Bowls, all that stuff. So, like I said, my ultimate goal is trying to get that ring, and I'm going to do whatever I can to be able to try to have the opportunity.
So, Quincy, I know you've addressed this on Untitled Unfiltered. What needs to change about the Browns' offense?
I think probably it just needs to flip philosophies, right? Like, it's been used to being this whole, let's see what we can squeeze out the quarterback position, but really focus on the run, right? It's been Nick Chubb carried offense, and then whatever we can get from quarterback is what we can get there. Now it needs to be pass first. It needs to be the game. The offense is going to go with what Deshaun does with the football in his hands. He's the most important guy in the offense. Nick Chubb becomes a complementary piece. The running back's going to, I think there's going to be a change in running backs behind Nick Chubb. I think that's going to look a lot different than what it has the last few years, because now you don't need 2 bruisers anymore. You really need somebody a little bit lighter that can run. That's a Jeff Wilson or somebody like that would be perfect for what the Browns want to do going forward. And then, it's going to change up some personnel wide receiving wise. I think we're going to see a lot more empty, a lot more not 5 wide. It's not a lot more 11 personnel in the future, 2 tight ends. I don't think we're going to see heavy 3 tight end sets. I think we're going to see less under the center stuff. And play action is going to look very different. The play action is going to come from the RPO game and the pistol sets instead of the traditional play action bounce rollout stuff. So, yeah, I think the makeup of how this offense looks going to change. Is going to look more like how the Shanahan system evolved in LA to be more of a downfield attacking Shanahan system than what it's been here, where it's been like a traditional old school run the ball first kind of system.
Do you think the wide receivers need to adjust to Watson as well, and the offensive line?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because all of these guys have been used to running their route for a couple seconds and then kind of looking back and seeing maybe if the play's still alive, but it's not going to get to him. The ball's not going to get to him. Now the play's alive much longer. The ball's going to come at you in angles that you aren't going to expect. There was one throw where Deshaun fitted through the hands of a DB, and it went right to where David Njoku was supposed to be. But since David saw that, he kind of stopped and broke a little bit, and then it finished the route. They're going to have to trust. Deshaun Watson is one of the most accurate quarterbacks when he is on his game in the NFL, period. We have not seen anything like that. I don't think any of these guys have played anything like that. And we've seen this in the in the Ravens game because he threw a lot of accurate footballs in that game. So he is going to be really accurate. I think it's going to take time for guys to understand what that means, how fast that ball is going to be coming in, and where they can be to get open in this kind of with this kind of a quarterback. So yeah, I think the wide receivers, it's going to take some time for them to adjust. I think overall we underestimated the amount of adjustment that putting in a piece at the caliber that Deshaun is was going to take for the rest of the offense. Because yeah, when you throw in a guy who can do very little, it's not hard to adjust around that because he can do very little. He can do one or two things. It's easy to adjust with that mid-season. Deshaun can do like 45 things, and that's just taking a while to understand and get the full capabilities of.
Quincy Carrier, is always great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Quincy.
No problem, Dave. You have a great day.
You too. Quincy Carrier, make sure you check him out. Untitled, unfiltered Browns coverage, always really good stuff. We're going to step aside. And Lance Reisland will break down some Commanders game film. We'll take a look at what could give the Browns trouble, what they can exploit. Sports4CLE, looking at the Commanders game tape with Lance Reisland. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns, getting ready for a Sunday afternoon game in Washington, D.C. against the Commanders. Let's welcome in Lance Reisland, film breakdown man, former coach as well from the Plain Dealer as well as cleveland.com. Lance, I know you've looked at the Commanders on tape. What jumps out to you? What's the biggest concern for the Browns going down to Washington to play the Commanders?
Well, without question, it's their front five, and they give you a five-man surface, which is kind of different than everybody else in the NFL. They got a guy, Payne, Ridgeway, Allen, Smith, Williams, Sweat. Obviously, with Chase Young, he's been in and out. He's a game wrecker. But those five guys as a whole, they're big, they're strong. They don't allow you to run the ball A, B, or C gap. You got to get to the edge on them. Very imposing defensive line. And what they give you a lot more odd front, one high safety than I've seen so far this year on film. But without question, those five guys, how do you block those five guys, and how do you keep them from wrecking the offensive plan?
So let's take a look. One of the areas that the Browns will want to do, and you kind of alluded to it, they're going to want to get to the edge. What do you see here, and why can this be effective?
Well, there's two reasons. One is, obviously, it's hard to run inside. A lot of times they're going to cover both guards and the center. By doing that, you're going to take away the double teams the Browns like to use on their outside zone and their gap scheme. So they're going to be a lot of one-on-ones in there against some very good players. And even if they win, a lot of times it's just a stalemate. Those defensive tackles are really, really good. Now, by having five defensive linemen and those linebackers playing tight and usually having one safety, you do not get the run support from the safeties that you get from a lot of other teams. So if you can get to that D gap, a lot of times there's no one left. So this is right here is a great Ray McLeod with a big run for the 49ers last week. And when they had their success with him and McCaffrey was at D gap on jet sweeps, in and pulls. But C and D gap is where they had their success. Not a lot of success running it in the middle in that A and B gap versus those big guys.
So the other thing that you mentioned with the five-man front, just a one high safety, what does that allow? What do you think the Browns will look for because of that?
Well, the middle of the field is the place to attack, and what you get those five down linemen down. So some of the stuff the Browns do with Njoku over the middle, with some of their dig routes with Cooper and DPJ, very, very accessible for the Browns. So here again, five-man, we get a 4 or 5-man front, doesn't matter because they like to crowd the line of scrimmage. And what you're going to get here is you're going to get 5-man front, and you're going to get a little dig route, and you're going to see the outside linebacker, flat defender here. He's going to run with Kittle, and then the guy's just going to sit right in that hole. And again, not just the middle of the field, a whole second layer, so about 10 to 15 yards. Kittle from last week had 6 catches for 120 yards. Just really hurt him in here. And the reason why is because they have less guys. They have 5 guys on the line of scrimmage. They're focused on stopping the run. With only 2 linebackers in there, it creates a lane. If you can get some over-unders, some separation routes, some curl flats, there's big windows in there, especially at the middle of the field.
The other thing is the 49ers run a Shanahan offense, so the Browns offense is very similar. When Deshaun Watson is right, that middle of the field is something that he usually attacks very, very well.
Yeah, and they do a really good job with different types of high-lows, different types of dig routes, crossing routes. I'd like to see them with the weather use some, as the weather got back, I would like to see some more of those routes last week in the cold weather. Those are easier completions. The windows are pretty easy. With those 5 linemen down, if you can pass protect, those windows are usually pretty wide because there's only usually 2 backers in there. With 1 high safety, you get seam routes. Everything between the hashes is a very clear window for the quarterback, and especially for Watson kind of getting back in the flow here. I think over the middle is going to be very successful this weekend.
All right, let's flip sides of the ball. Browns defense, this has to be a concern. The Commanders, just their running style. What do you see they like to do running the football?
Well, they do a lot of interesting stuff. One is it's going to look very similar to the Browns offense the last couple of years. They do a lot of 13 personnel, really like the receivers. They got their tight ends are Logan Thomas, John Bates, and Cole Turner, very big, aggressive guys. And what you see here is you're going to see a split zone. But what they do differently is they insert a tight end. So the guy in the bottom is going to cut off like a normal zone. But the guy at the top tight end, he's actually going to insert and block the linebacker. Now, what that does, it allows the offensive linemen not to come off their double teams. And they can just take that double team and run it into the ground. And that's a concern for the Browns because they've struggled with normal double teams. But a lot of times, the way to beat the double team is that the offensive lineman is not sure who's going to come off. Really cool thing for the Redskins here is that they insert a guy. They don't have to leave the double team, and they can get some great movement. And Charles Leno, Andrew Noel, their offensive line, they're very aggressive run blockers. They do struggle with some pass protection at times, but as run blockers, they're very aggressive, very, very aggressive.
Another thing that is a concern, they have a pretty effective combination as far as wide receivers go with Jahan Dotson and Terry McLaurin.
A number of things here. So first of all, they do a very good job in the red zone of creating concepts. So this is going to just be a little curl smash concept. So they're going to take the tight end, and because the safety is tight, because it's the red zone, the tight end's going to sit right on the goal line. And as he sits, the safety sits with him, and Jahan Dotson's going to run a little corner route behind him. This is a red zone specialty. Obviously the safeties will be deeper if they're in the middle of the field, but they do a very good job. And they do a great job getting Dotson, McLaurin, who I think is an outstanding receiver, and even Curtis Samuel, who runs some jet sweeps. So they have a very diverse group there who are all very good in the red zone, and they do a very good job of scheming it up and getting these guys open.
All right, so the Browns will face Carson Wentz. They know that Wentz has been named the starter again after Tyler Heineke started and struggled the last couple of games. What do the Browns want to do? They want to make the Commanders one-dimensional? Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Absolutely. I think they need the crowd line of scrimmage. I think they need to force those corners to play man, ward. Get those guys in man coverage. They struggle. So a couple things here. First of all, Wentz, I've always liked Carson Wentz, but how he has an issue with turnovers, and he can make all the throws, but if he's forced to, win the game, it's a struggle for him. Another thing, even though Leno and Norwell and these guys are very good at run blocking, they do struggle in one-on-one pass protection, and they leave him out there a bunch by himself. Leno versus Myles Garrett is a mismatch in favor of the Browns. If you can get Lentz into third and medium, third and long situations, he will make mistakes, especially if he is pressured. So the Browns need to play a little bit more man coverage. I think they can press these guys. I think they're good matchups. Even though the receivers are good, I think they're good matchups for the Browns. And if they can make them one-dimensional and put the onus on Wentz to beat them, I think they have a very good chance of winning the game.
Yeah, I would agree with you. And you alluded to it. Wentz has shown he'll take a chance and turn the football over, and that's something the Browns defense will need to do. A couple turnovers would go a long way.
Yeah, they just get, they need to create some momentum, and it helps that offense. The offense is just not clicking. the way I think it will here eventually, obviously going into next year. But getting a turnover and creating a short field and getting some momentum for that offense is something that'll get this Browns team going. And I think it's got to start with the defense. Everybody's talking about offense, but I think it's got to start with the defense. And this is a great week. Pressure Wentz, create some turnovers, get some short fields, and kind of get this offense rolling.
Lance Reisland, as always, great stuff. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Lance.
As always, thanks for having me.
Lance Reisland, make sure you check him out. Really good film breakdowns, cleveland.com, as well as The Plain Dealer. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We turn our attention to the Buckeyes, getting ready for the national semifinals New Year's Eve. So that's tomorrow. Stephen Means joins us, Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to ohiolottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We turn our attention to another football game, a little bit more important. Buckeyes getting ready for the national semifinal game against the Georgia Bulldogs, top-ranked Georgia Bulldogs. Tommy Eichenberg, Cleveland native from St. Ignatius High School, starting linebacker from the Buckeyes, and Jack Sawyer talking about the Buckeyes players' attitude leading up to this national semifinal game.
It's definitely made this this team tighter. Just we were down for a little bit, and then we all came back together, right? We got stronger, and we have each other, and that's all we need. So.
Yeah, I just think you find out who's really there with you when things aren't going well, and when things didn't go our way, we still had each other, and it was big, just being able to lean on each other through that time, and we got a second chance at life, so to speak, with the playoffs, which I thought we deserved to be in anyway, but we just got that much tighter, and the last month of practice have been really great, with the whole team, offense and defense, and so definitely thought the adversity, brought us a lot closer together. 100%. We feel like it's always been Ohio against the world, and we feel like that's never going to change, and so throughout this whole month of bowl prep, our defense has been playing very pissed off in practice. I think the whole team as a whole has been, and I think that's where we need to be. And like I said, we're just really, really focused and really eager to get back on the field Saturday night.
With that, let's welcome in Stephen Means, Buckeyes beat reporter for the Plain Dealer, cleveland.com, down in Atlanta, getting ready for that Peach Bowl tomorrow night. Stephen, you've been there. What have you sensed from the Ohio State players as they get ready for the national semifinal game?
A lot of guys who feel like they're just ready to play football. I think between the media day that they had before we got to Atlanta, and then the media day that they had on Tuesday, and the media day they had on Wednesday, and then the media day they had on Thursday, I think they're all just kind of sick of talking, especially since a lot of the talking right now is, hey, what if you get another chance against Michigan? Which is, I understand the question and how big of a game that would be, but from their standpoint, Georgia is very good, so good that they're the reigning national champions, and they've lost one game in the past 2 years, so that's where they probably should have their focus, which is a good thing. I think that it's been a good buy from Ohio State because it does feel serious.
When you look at this game, a lot of the national people don't think it's going to be close. Do you think that kind of gives Ohio State a little bit of a chip on their shoulders?
Yes, and a lot of that is how the Michigan game played out. If you just look at the score, you probably think, oh, Michigan dominated Ohio State again, when that's not actually what happened. It came down to 2 or 3 plays here where some guys were out of position and it led to some touchdowns, but it wasn't nearly the type of beating that it was in 2021. And plus, Michigan's one of the 4 best teams in the country. I mean, things happen like that. So they probably are. I mean, you just heard Jack Sawyer saying how Ohio against the world, that's been a thing since the playoff was invented. You know, they've used Woody against the world, which is more specific, this football team against basically everybody else. So Ohio State doesn't get to play underdog very often. In fact, they haven't been an underdog since the Clemson game in 2020, that Sugar Bowl, and we saw what happened there, 49-28. I'm not saying that that's going to happen again, but when we've seen Ohio State in these underdog spots, which rarely happens, but when we do see it, they typically show up to play, and it typically means good things for Ohio State.
What do you expect to see specifically from the defense? Again, the defense let up some big plays. Big plays, missed tackles, I think you'd characterize as what went wrong against Michigan. What do you think? What do you expect to see against Georgia from the defense?
I expect Jim Knowles to call the same aggressive game he did against Michigan. I just expect people to be better positioned to make plays. And he has consistently said that anytime a play hasn't been made, I made a call. It was the right call. It's just the person who was supposed to make a play didn't make a play. That's on me as a coach. That's not on the player to make that play. And so I would expect the same thing. He's going to be aggressive. There's going to be some times where he calls a cover 0 blitz. He's going to send blitzes from all over the place. He'll send the safeties. He'll send linebackers. He'll send everybody. But if you don't have the guy in a position who allows that play to be made, while just in case a quarterback gets the ball off, it's a 7-yard gain instead of a 70-yard gain. That's what you have against Michigan. But so I would expect Jim Knowles to call the same aggressive style of defense he was calling this entire season, and quite frankly, the same style of aggressive play calling we've seen his entire career that got him here in the first place. This is not the game to switch that up.
No, and you know what? There's something to be said for not changing from who you are. That's who the Buckeyes were, and that's who they should continue to be. What about keys? When you look at this, and we'll dive deeper into some of them, but some simple keys, like if this goes well, Ohio State should be in good shape. If this goes this way, that's going to be a long night for the Buckeyes.
If this passing game is the passing game we know it to be, Ohio State's chances are sky high. And what I mean by that is C.J. Stroud is the C.J. Stroud we know. Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka show up to play, and they're both flirting with 100 yards, maybe even over 100 yards. But most importantly in all that, the play caller. Ryan Day is aggressive with his play calling style. We've had times this season where fans have complained because the game was just bubble screen after bubble screen, but they weren't attacking downfield. They got to attack downfield in this game. Georgia's got a very good secondary, and it's led by Keely Ringo, who might be a first-round draft pick in a couple of months here. But Ohio State's got 3 first-rounders to lead their passing attack as well. And then you throw in Julian Fleming, who's been a quality number 3 for them this year. You have to throw it down the field. You have to stretch the field vertically time and time again. So it starts there. Secondly, I don't think they have to be an elite running team, but they have to be able to keep Georgia honest so that they can take those shots. Mayan Williams didn't practice the first 2 days, but he did practice yesterday, and Ryan Day said he's ready to go. Is it the Mayan Williams show, or is it more running back by committee with Chip Trayanum, who we saw against Michigan, and Dallin Hayden, who we've seen at times as well? So it starts there. And then the last thing is just keep Jalen Carter under control. Jalen Carter is probably the best player in college football. He's probably going to be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. You can't let him just live in the backfield all day and disrupt C.J. Stroud, especially since he rushes from the interior and can disrupt the pocket like that. And if you notice, I did 3 offensive things because this defense is going to give up some points. It's not the defense's job to shut out Georgia. If that happens, kudos to Jim Knowles for doing that. But this is on the offense. If the offense shows up, all 5 of Ryan Day's losses came when the offense failed to score at least 30 points. When they are 40 or above, they're winning the football game. So they need to score. They need to move the ball. And then I'll say it again, they need to score. If the offense doesn't show up, it doesn't matter how well the defense is playing.
All right, before we go to break, Ryan Day talked about the team's approach to this and getting that second chance after the Michigan loss.
They should be, and we all should be. We know, what we need to do in this game to win. And that's kind of the way that this month has been for a lot of us. At practice every day, there's been an edge. There's been friction, there's been conflict, there's been a lot of that going on, and that's a healthy thing. And so, the one good thing about this, we're going to go play. we're not going to sit there and worry about what if or anything like that. Nobody really gives us a chance to win this game anyways. So we're going to let it all out. We're going to play as hard as we possibly can and look up after 4 quarters and see where we're at. All the focus is just playing, the fastest and most violent game we played all season here, Saturday night, 8 o'clock. And, I just think all the work that we put in this last month is going to now show. And our guys are going to play with confidence because we've had a really good month of prep.
Stephen, what have you sensed from Ryan Day, and how important is this game to Ryan Day, given those 2 Michigan losses? You win this and you get into the national championship game and you beat Michigan, nobody's talking about anything other than you won the national championship.
Yeah, I think Ryan Day's got to offset those back-to-back Michigan losses because they were very bad. Regardless of what the context is behind them, they lost by 20-plus points in back-to-back years against Michigan. And unlike last year, you can't use the excuse of the weather or being on the road as the reason why. Him and C.J. Stroud need to do something here to write some of that legacy here, because right now, those two as a pairing are known as these guys who can put up the numbers, but they don't win the big games. In fact, they've only really beaten one big-time team so far, and that's Penn State. And they beat them twice. Even the Utah game, Utah had some opt-outs, and they were playing some running backs at corner, which allowed that to happen. And so they do the pressure isn't on them the same way it is for Georgia, because this is basically Georgia's backyard and they're the number 1 team in the country. But there's not really a better way I can think of to offset some Michigan losses than to bounce back from a Michigan loss, beat the reigning national champions in their backyard in a playoff game, and then get a rematch with your rival in the national championship game and beat them as well, and you win the ultimate prize.
Stephen Means and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. Other side of the break, we'll talk a little bit more about that Georgia defense. Ohio State Buckeyes offense needs to get some points on the board. Sports for CLE will be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program recognizes role model students and teachers from across Ohio. Nominations can now be done completely online. To nominate a deserving teacher or student, go to OhioLottery.com. In the About section, find Partners in Education. There you will find links to the nomination forms. Students kindergarten through 12th grade can be academic all-stars. Teachers can be honored as a Teacher of the Month. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education, where stars shine.
The Greater Cleveland Sports Hall of Fame celebrates the star athletes and notable sports figures who were born or have made their home in Greater Cleveland. It tells the story of discipline, commitment, perseverance, sportsmanship, and excellence in achievement. It encourages and inspires those who believe in sport and its direct impact on the well-being of our community. Go to clevelandsportshall.com or follow us on Twitter at GCLE Sports HOF for more details.
We continue talking Buckeyes with Stephen Means, Buckeyes beats reporter for the Ohio State Buckeyes, who is in Georgia to cover the national semifinal game. Ryan Day talked about a really good Georgia defense that might be among the best in the country.
They have good players all over the place. They have 5 stars running around all over the field, certainly in the back end. Their corners are excellent. The safeties are really good. And linebackers are really athletic and play downhill and play physical. And the front is very good as well. So we're going to have to be balanced, like we always are. We're going to have to, find ways to, score in the red zone. We're going to have to be creative in all kinds of different areas. But at the end of the day, it's going to come down to who's more physical, who's winning the game up front, who's going to play harder, who's going to play through the whistle, who's going to play for 4 quarters. And they're a very, very good team, but so are we. And this is going to be, a great game on Saturday night. I think it's going to be, one of the more, I think they said, more people in this game they've ever had in the stadium. So our guys are excited about that. I mean, this is, when you get to this point of the year, this is where you want to be. And all the focus has been on this game for our guys.
And again, Stephen Means, Buckeyes beat reporter, is in Atlanta covering this game. And Stephen, when you look at that Georgia defense, it was historically good a season ago. It's not much below that level this year, is it?
Yeah, still some first-rounders all over the place. I think last year was the greatest we've seen in some decades. this was just the greatest we've seen in a couple of years. Maybe if you take away that Georgia defense from last year, this is the matchup everyone's wanted to see, though, right? Because even Ohio State's offense, it's not quite what it was last year, but it's still really good. But for a year, this is what everyone wanted to see. Georgia's defense against Ohio State's offense. We're just getting it a year later, which is probably the best thing for both teams, because while this sides of the ball for each aren't as good as they historically as they were last year, the other sides are a little bit better, so it makes it for a better football game.
What do the Buckeyes need from C.J. Stroud? It seems like in the Michigan game when he got pressured, it didn't go as well as they would have liked to.
Yeah, I think he's got to be him. Now, will he have to run at some point? Maybe. Maybe he'll have to scramble for a first down here or there. But I just think his arm has to be on. He's got to be able to diagnose things and get rid of the ball quickly, because getting rid of the ball quickly and making sure you don't get touched is just as difficult for a defensive lineman to deal with as it is to get rushed, run around, and then maybe get 6 or 7 yards on that play. If you just throw the ball and get those 6 or 7 yards that way, that's just as impactful. So maybe he runs, maybe he doesn't, but I do know he's got to be the accurate C.J. Stroud that we've all come to know. Get rid of that ball quickly, get it to these weapons, whether it's Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, Julian Fleming, even Cade Stover, who's proven to be one of the better tight ends in the Big Ten. Mayan Williams as a running back, as a ball catcher out the running back position. He's just got to get rid of the ball as quickly as possible and don't give this defensive line led by Jalen Carter a chance to get to him.
Before I let you go, some guys you think could step up and have big games if the Buckeyes are going to get this, and what do you think happens in this one?
I think this defense has got Lathan Ransom, who I think has been steadily building towards a game like this. I think he can have a big-time game. I think these cornerbacks finally healthy, because the cornerback has been the one down position for Ohio State this year. And you're not really sure if it's a talent thing or it's a health thing, because all these guys have been in and out of the lineup all year. So a guy like Jordan Hancock, who's finally healthy, who's from Georgia, is this a chance for us to finally see him play the game that this entire coaching staff, even going back to the offseason, they raved both on the record and off the record about what Jordan Hancock could do this season? Do we finally see that? And I'll put a score out prediction down. I'm going to say Ohio State wins 42-39, and it comes down to maybe the last 4 minutes of the game, maybe even the last 3 minutes of the game. Ohio State takes the ball, gets the ball, and they're down. And C.J. Stroud leads one of those drives where if it was a regular season, we go Heisman moment. But it's not. Now it's championship winning moment time, and I think he gets that opportunity on Saturday where it's a back-and-forth affair all night, and then finally Ohio State gets the last say with the last 3 or 4 minutes in the game.
Stephen Means, make sure you check him out. He will have coverage leading up to and then analysis of the national championship game, cleveland.com, as well as the pages of the Plain Dealer. Stephen, as always, thanks so much for taking the time and talking Buckeyes with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, Stephen Means, again, make sure you check out his coverage. Really good stuff. Plain Dealer and cleveland.com. Each and every week, we recognize a role model student from somewhere across the state of Ohio. Today, we head to North Olmsted High School to recognize Gabriella Ballou. She is a senior and a leader, not only in the high school at North Olmsted, but in the community of North Olmsted as well. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is proud to salute North Olmsted High School's Gabrielle Ballou, this week's Shining Star. Senior Gabrielle Ballou is in the top 10 of her class academically at North Olmsted High School. She's taking advanced placement and college credit plus classes and has for several years. As impressive as that is, it only scratches the surface of Gabrielle's mark during her time at North Olmsted.
Just by being involved, it gets you those experiences of what real life it really is, and I'm glad I've branched out. And freshman me would not talk to anyone. Freshman me would not be doing this right now. Not to say that I'm not shy at all, but I've learned to branch out and be out of my comfort zone.
I think Gabby's somebody who sets goals, achieves those goals, but kind of takes the time to know what those goals are and live during them, and not always kind of look towards the future.
Gabby has been on the yearbook staff since her freshman year. It's what got her started at getting involved at North Olmsted and has led to her being the chief editor of the yearbook the last 2 years.
I'm very artsy as a person, so just the description of yearbook was, oh, you're gonna get to create, you're gonna get to learn photography, and it seemed like it had everything I wanted all in one class. So I applied and I actually got in, so thank God I did, because I would have, honestly, if it wasn't for yearbook, I don't think I'd be as involved as I am in the high school.
Value is also involved in Key Club, National Honor Society, and a program called Difference Makers at North Olmsted High School.
Those are students that are making a difference in our school each and every day by promoting different programs that just collaboratively get our students together and kind of create a culture that is positive here at North Olmsted High School. So she had asked me if that would be something that she could join and be a part of, and certainly I wanted to scoop her right up to be a part of the Difference Makers, so she started that with us last school year.
Outside of the high school, Gabrielle is also involved in the community. She volunteers with hospice, where she enjoys spending time with some of the patients.
I will sit with them, talk to them. Whatever they need, I'll try to ask and see if I could provide it for them. Like I remember I was there 2 weeks ago, and one of my ladies, she's 97, God bless her heart, she asked for fuzzy socks, and I was just so thrilled to go and buy it for her, because I was like, oh, what color do you want? And she'll actually talk to me, and there's other kids that she'll talk to, but not as much as me, so it's that comforting feeling of like, oh, I've made a connection.
Value has a unique ability to connect with a wide variety of people of all ages. She'll graduate from high school with right around 40 college credits and has a plan for her education going forward.
I'll be going off to college for architecture engineering. I love math and I love art, so it's a good combination of both. I also enlisted in the Marines, and I'm going to the reserve program. I'm going to boot camp all over summer, and then I'll be with them throughout the 4 years of college, and then 2 years after that. And hopefully by the end of it, I'll be an architecture engineer and just have my life figured out.
If you're thinking that Value is mature beyond her college years, you'd be correct. She had her college path very well thought out.
I guess I've always wanted to just have that discipline and just learn how to manage everything. I would say I'm very busy, so I would love to have a set schedule of what I do, and I feel the Marines was just a choice that I made that was going to get me to learn like those values and what it is to have leadership, what it is to have the discipline to like keep up with everything, and just the physical aspect of it too.
She also has a sibling in our younger grades, so I think that's where the investment was in kind of working with our younger students, because she really wants to see North Olmsted be successful. She's a pillar of the community as a senior in high school, and I think that's something really special.
If you know a student who deserves recognition, we want to hear about them, and you can nominate them completely online. Go to OhioLottery.com, find the About section. Click on Partners in Education. There you will see links to nomination forms. Nominate that student as an academic all-star, and they could end up being featured as our next shining star. A lot of time on this show. Again, we will see you next week. Stay safe. Have a great New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. We will see you next week on Sports4CLE. Have a great night, everybody.